Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome today to this new class, inshallah, as it's titled here, Tijarah. Tijarah and Muslim Business Ethics, inshallah. So today I am your facilitator, I am your host, inshallah, and I will be covering a range of different topics regarding this topic here, Tijarah. So let's get into it, inshallah, whilst I just set up the actual slides. I did send on the WhatsApp group and also on the emails. So for those people who signed up, I send them an email. And for those people who are on the WhatsApp group, I send them also a course description. So inside there, inshallah, I'll be feeding you some information every week regarding the topics and some of the things that we'll be talking about. So if you've not gotten it yet, please look for it in your emails, and also you can join the WhatsApp group. There's a WhatsApp group which, inshallah, will be sharing all the information that we send on email as well. So if you're not very friendly with email, you can always get on to WhatsApp groups, and then you'll get the information according to the check. So that's the first thing. Second thing is that, inshallah, part of the course is whenever we touch on certain topics, I like to go through a little discussion with you all. And maybe we can take a little bit of question and answers as well to the end. So I'll try to stick to a certain time frame, and then after that time, we'll just allow anyone to ask questions and so on, so we can have discussions, because this is something that is very important. And inshallah, as we go along, you'll get more of the relevance of the importance, inshallah. Third thing is that with regard to the course description that I sent to you all, which you should be able to access by now, inshallah, we have the ability to change it up a little bit, add on a few other topics, maybe take off a few topics, maybe zone into some of the things that you find that might be more important. So inshallah, if that is the case and you want to bring up something, please do so as well. As we go through the course of this course or this session, inshallah, we'll be able to adapt the course description and try to ensure that everyone is getting what they came to this course for, inshallah. Lastly, just give a little introduction to myself. I am Abrar Ali. I myself teach in the Nur Islam Masjid. I am the principal of the Maktab, also part of the Masjid administration as well. And equally, I'm the chairman and principal of Al-Ihsaan Institute and Al-Ihsaan Primary School as well. So I'm based here in San Juan. So in case anyone did not know who I am, a little quick description of who I am, inshallah. And as we go along, you'll get to know a little bit more about me, inshallah. So let's get at it. If you have any burning things that right now you want to mention, you can put it in the chat as well, inshallah, because you can, yes, chat, inshallah. So the chat is up and it's running. And I just wanted to make sure, okay, we have. All right, so let's start with this topic called Tijarah. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم فإذا قضيت الصلاة فانتشروا في الأرض وابتغوا من فضل الله واذكروا الله كثيرا لعلكم تفلحون صدق الله العظيم. This verse that I recited, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in His mercy to mankind has addressed one of those daily routines that we have. It starts off with the last ruku of Surah Jum'ah, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala starts the Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, O you who believe. Idha nudiya, when the adhan is called, nudiya lis-salati liyawm al-jum'ati fas'aw ila dhikrillah. When the adhan is called for the Jum'ah Salah, hasten towards the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. فَاسْعَوْا إِلَىٰ ذِكْرِ اللَّهِ وَذَرُوا الْبَيْءِ, and leave off bay'. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says leave off. Bay' here is referred to as trade. leave off trade. So the reason why I use this verse to start off is because it's actually a common verse that is recited. In fact, one of the sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was to recite this surah in the Jum'ah Salah as well. And it's a real connection that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was given to the Sahaba. Imagine Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has revealed a surah, and within the surah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is addressing those Sahaba who would have left their business places, left their trade, left their Tijarah, left their commerce, and come to the masjid to listen to the message that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was given. So imagine the first time that was revealed, how spiritually uplifting that would have been for the Sahaba radiallahu anhum. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَإِذَا قُضِيَتِ الصَّلَاةِ when the salah is finished, إِذَا قُضِيَتِ الصَّلَاةِ فَانْتَشِرُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ then spread yourselves on the earth, go ahead, move about now, فَانْتَشِرُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ وَابْتَغُوا مِنْ فَضْلِ اللَّهِ and then search for the fadl of Allah, search for the bounty of Allah, search for the commerce from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Allah here is using another word here, fadl. So he's saying that go ahead and start searching for that commerce, that wealth, that involvement that you will have in your trading aspects. So he says, فَإِذَا قُضِيَتِ الصَّلَاةُ فَانْتَشِرُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ وَابْتَغُوا مِنْ فَضْلِ اللَّهِ and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the aspects of the dhikr of Allah and so on and so forth. The beautiful part of this that I wanted to highlight is these are two words right away that is used in the Quran for trade, for commerce, for tijarah. And that's the two words that I mentioned. The third word is this one that we started the topic with. It's called tijarah. The tijarah itself is another word that is used in the Quran, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sometimes use it for the trade that He gives us as humankind in this temporary world, the trade off that we do following the laws of Allah and Sharia, that we will get tijaratan lan tabur, such a trade or such an outcome or such an investment that would never cease to exist. It will be continuous and continuously benefiting you. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala quite directly, and that's the point I'm starting with, quite directly started to show the Sahaba radiallahu anhum their general ways of earning money was the way that Allah used to talk to them in the Quran. So that's the beauty. Where Allah did not just, when He would talk about trade aspects, or He talked about Ibadah, He talked about the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, talked about all the aspects that are very important. Sometimes He would refer in the words of the tradesman. We refer to the Sahaba or to us, to the Ummah, in words of entrepreneurship, in words of business life. Because think about it now. Most of our day as a normal person, once you're not retired, once you're not a student and so on, many of the days goes by in your earnings, ensuring that you have a job, working with someone, trying to raise an income for yourselves, for your families, for your dependents, doing trades. If you're a business person or you are doing business, you'll try to buy, sell, these kind of things every day. It's every day. As you would say, it's the grind, right? Grinding hard, and you have to get out there and you have to make it happen, and you have to, inshallah, bring back for your families. And this itself, and that's why in some of the adverts that I was that they got for this class, it says that it's a noble deed. It's a noble deed that you're doing. So an example of the nobility of it, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Muzammil. So Surah Muzammil is the 73rd surah of the Quran. Verse 20, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, عَلِمَ أَنْ سَيَكُونُ مِنْكُمْ مَرْضَى وَآخَرُونَ يَضْرِبُونَ فِي الْأَرْضِ يَبْتَغُونَ مِنْ فَضْلِ اللَّهِ وَآخَرُونَ يُقَاتِلُونَ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ. So Here, Allah so beautifully says in the Quran, Alima an sayakunu minkum marada. So before this verse, Allah was talking about the Qiyamul Layl, or waking up in the night and reciting Quran and standing in prayer, in the night prayer. So the Prophet ﷺ had to pray this tahajjud salah every single night. So just like salah is followed upon us or obligatory upon us that we have to pray our salah. Similarly for the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he had to pray the salah, but he was also praying an extra salah, which is the tahajjud salah. A tahajjud salah was mandatory upon the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, wherein he would get up and he would pray. So the verses before this one I just recited was talking about the standing in prayer for the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So the whole chapter there talks about standing and reciting of the Quran, recite from what is easy and so on. And there it talks about the whole standing in the night of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Beautiful little incident to look up, inshallah. So try to do so. But thereafter, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says this verse that I just recited. Alima an sayakunu minkum marada, that Allah knows that this prayer would be hard for some people. So he says that Alima an sayakunu minkum marada, that amongst you will have sick people. So you have people who are ill, so they're not able to, because obviously they're ill, they're not ready to, they can't, so they would stay asleep, or they would rest more, or they would need a little bit more care. So here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is bringing that and making mention of it. So he says, I know some of you will be sick. But then he goes on, minkum marada wa akharuna yadribuna fil ard. And there are some others who will be moving about in the earth. They will be toiling in the earth. They will be going around. They will be traveling. They will be doing things. يَبْتَغُونَ مِنْ فَضْلِ اللَّهِ. What are the things that they'll be doing? They are searching for the fadl, and they're searching for the wealth, basically, of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or the bounty of Allah. So here, literally, fadl means bounty or virtue of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But fadl is directly connected to the wealth a person earns, and this itself is a reason why they may not be able to stand in the tahajjud salah. Isn't that what happens to a lot of us? We can't get up in the night. I'm sure it's hard on many of us. Many of you all would, if you would get up 3, 4 o'clock in the morning to pray tahajjud salah, what's going to happen in the day for your work? What time you're going to go to sleep? What time you're going to be able to function? And just generally speaking, it's just going to be so hard to function. So here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is making mention of that, and that's the beauty of it. Allah addresses this whole topic of Tijarah, which I'm getting at, but I'm just showing you from the lenses of the Quran, and so I thought I'll bring some of the hadith as well, how beautifully Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has addressed the fact that this is a real concern that the believer will have. So first reason why Allah says that He understands that many people would not be able to stand in the night prayer is the sickness. The second reason is because they're busy with their daily affairs of their earnings, making sure that they can earn for their family, they can provide, especially the men, right? الرجال قوامون على النساء بما فضل الله بعضهم على بعض. The men have been given a degree of guardianship over the females. Why? Because of bima anfaqu, because of what they spend. So Allah given some of them over others, but the reason why Allah gives it is because of the expenditure that they put out, the earnings that they do. They go out, they try to bring back an income, and then they see about their family. So that's one of the mandatory requirements upon the males in the family. So the husband will have to fulfill that, and if he does not, then he's questionable in the Sharia as well. This is a responsibility given to the males and not that of the females. Inshallah, we'll talk about that aspect later on. And alhamdulillah, females do help in the kind of society that we're looking at, but that responsibility is really solely on the male. Anyway, the point I'm making is these are two reasons, and then وَآخَرُونَ يُقَاتِلُونَ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ. The third reason Allah mentions in this verse is that another group of people will be fighting in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and will be in warfare. They will be doing jihad, they will be in the process of fighting. So when a military wing is out there fighting, they have to consider their timings, they have to consider what is the situation, they have to consider the place. So they're not expected as well. It's not upon them to get up and pray this night prayer. Although obviously it's good in all of these aspects, all these different categories. If they can, then mashallah, this is between them and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As when the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam would go on battles and expeditions, he would still get up and he would still be praying. And again, it was mandatory upon him, but it's a definite lesson for all of us, and we can all do more with regard to our spirituality and connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that being said, Allah has exempted, not exempted, but had highlighted three categories that He understands the needs of these three categories. So He doesn't expect that they would fully be ready to pray this Qiyamul Layl. Now, in Tafsir al-Jalalain, it is mentioned that this ayah has regarded as equal the mujahideen, those people who fight in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and those who are earning a halal income on a daily basis. So Allah has ranked jihad, and the merit of jihad and the amount of encouragement that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam would have given to those people who went out and fought for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In fact, it's one of the things that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned, that no believer basically should sleep at night not hoping for that genuine opportunity of fighting for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if so, then if that person does not have that desire in their heart, then they're not of true faith. Right? It's because it's such a enduring, difficult, demanding task that Allah has placed on some of the believers, and had placed that at the time of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and they had to respond. So they did not have the choice to say, you know what, I'm not joining the army at this point. Allah had made it mandatory upon them within the Sharia. When the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam calls upon you, you respond. Like that now have been implemented in many of the countries as well of the world, that it is mandatory to enroll in the army for a period of time. So some places they actually force that onto every single person after 18 years old and so on. So it depends on the needs of the country. That is definitely something that can be considered as a means of defense and even offensive measures that the country may consider taking. So subhanAllah, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam had considered, and that's why Sharia is such a complete system of governance, of politics, of trade, of all of the different things that we'll be discussing, inshallah. So furthermore, he says that whoever conveys food from one city to another and sells it at the price on that day will have the rank of the martyrs with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he further goes on and he explains that, when a person goes out there and he's trading, he's being a business person, he's an entrepreneur, he's trying to legitimately, with sincerity and with following the Sharia, he tries to bring back an earning for his family and tries to make money basically. He's trying to make, dollars and cents, That itself, with the right connection, with the right understanding, with the right ethics and the right practices, then he is ranking with the ones who are fighting in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I think that's a beautiful honor, right? Think about it now. Isn't it something that, it now feels like we're getting a sense of connection with Allah. This is a sense of ibadah now we can understand. We can really see that Allah is going to reward us, and we can understand why there's a lot of reward for the earnings or the efforts that you put out for your families to ensure that everybody is well taken care of, eating, drinking, well clothed, have a place to stay. So this is not done in a vacuum, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not see this to be nothing. It's something that is actually very meritorious and noble in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I will continue that discussion as we go forward. In another verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَتَرَى الْفُلْكَ مَوَاخِرَ فِيهِ لِتَبْتَغُوا مِنْ فَضْلِهِ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَشْكُرُونَ. In Surah Nahl, in verse 14, Allah mentions here, and you see the ships cleaving through it so that you can seek His bounty. Meaning the ships that sail, like for example, those who might be importing things, those people who are exporting things. Ships take stock and take goods and so on, and it brings in things, and that's where exchange of goods takes place. People buy, people sell, and so on. So these things happen. So Allah is saying that you see the ships, they sail. Now at that time of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and generally you can understand how important the wind is for the sails. So sail ships, I saw recently they started a new technology where they're trying to harness the wind while sailing for renewable energy. So it will power the boats instead of having electrical engines that's still powered by the propellers. I mean, not propellers, what we would call the sails, but now there's a new technology that allows a type of sail, but it's still going to be wind driven, but it harnesses the power of the wind within the system and then pushes the boat and so on. The point I'm making here is that the wind is essential for a sailboat. Without the wind, you ever seen a sailboat in the ocean when there's no wind? It stops right there. I mean, once you're not using the engine and so on, it stops. There's nothing going to move that boat. So it's a fundamental part of sailing and to be able to trade. So understand from a sailboat perspective. Allah brings some beautiful examples sometimes. It gives us and if you have been on a boat and you've been on a sailboat, you'll understand the concept even more intimately. It's beautiful afterwards. So Allah is saying this in the Quran. وَتَرَى الْفُلْكَ مَوَاخِرَ فِيهِ. And you see the ships cleaving through it so that you can seek His bounty, so that hopefully you will show thanks to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So here there are so many bounties mentioned in the Quran, but one of them is the usage of the seas and the oceans and the rivers for helping internal and external trade and movement of goods. And also Allah has placed in another ayat, He says that He has helped the sailors and those people with the wind. وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ أَن يُرْسِلَ الرِّيَاحَ مُبَشِّرَاتٍ. That is from His virtues and His signs that He has sent the winds so that it becomes a glad tidings, because they will see the winds blowing, they'll be able to move. يُذِيقَهُم مِّن رَحْمَتِهِ. And they feel the sense of His rahman, His mercy, when it starts moving and the sailing starts taking. لِتَجْرِيَ فَوْقَ بِأَمْرِهِ لِتَبْتَغُوا مِنْ فَضْلِهِ. So that He makes the ships run by His command and enable you to seek His bounty again, so that hopefully you can be thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So in this verse here, in the two verses I just mentioned, they actually talks about that when you get from the fadl, when you get from the bounty, when you get the virtues of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then you'll be thankful for it. You'll be mindful that Allah has blessed you. So this is a little insight about some of the verses. I'll go along inshallah with other verses when we continue in the discussion. Every week I'll try to bring a certain aspect of the verses of Quran which talks about trade in Quran, which talks about different words and so on. With this, I will share this with you all later on, inshallah. So the topic for our discussion here is Tijarah. So where does this word come from? It comes from the Arabic word from ta, jim, or ra, right? Tijarah. So Tijarah itself is an easy way of translating in English is entrepreneurship. So entrepreneurship is a very common word now that's been used. And entrepreneurship, or becoming a business person, businessman, businesswoman, is talked about in the Quran and in the Hadith as well. In the Hadith, one of the mentions, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, "At-tajiru saduqul amin." At-Tajir. So here that word is being used. At-Tajir is basically a trader. To trade itself, entrepreneur, a business person. At-Tajir as-Saduq al-Amin. That trader who is very honest. Honest, al-Amin, he's trustworthy. So honest and trustworthy trader مع الصديقين والشهداء ومع النبيين والصديقين والشهداء ومع النبيين والشهداء, something like that. Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam says that they would be amongst the prophets of Allah. Imagine that. A trader, a good business person, can be amongst the Sahaba, can be amongst the Anbiya, can be amongst the Shuhada, the martyrs, as I just mentioned, the virtue of martyr, can be amongst those people who are the elite class that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is happy with them. Because whenever Allah talks about, you know, the Anbiya, we all know there's Maqsoom, that all of the Anbiya will be rightly guided and will be those who Allah has bestowed His bounty upon, as mentioned in Surah Fatiha. So these are the ones who we aspire to be. That's why in Surah Fatiha every single day we recite that verse. إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ اهْدِنَا الصِّرَاطَ الْمُسْتَقِيمَ صِرَاطَ الَّذِينَ أَنْعَمْتَ, that guide us on the path of those who you have bestowed your favor upon. So here we're asking every day, because Allah knows that this is the pathway to get to Him. Follow those who are successful. And that's why in Islam, and if you can put a little pin on this point here, that in Islam, we recognize that we need people's examples to follow to be able to become successful in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Without people, without pious people, without ulama, without the pious people, without the truthful people, without those people who are pious, the salihin, then we ourselves will probably go astray. So it's very important to understand that we have to continuously befriend, get close to, consider, help, support, be part of anyone who we can see with our visible eye, or even, you know, assume that they would be a pious person, they would be a knowledgeable person. Obviously, both of them together, pious and knowledgeable, is very good. Or even if you're not knowledgeable, then you can still be pious, mashallah. So you always try to get close to these people, because they have unlocked, inshallah, but they have the keys to the closeness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And to become successful in this world, definitely we need to be holders of those keys, and we need to be able to access Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and is definitely through the companionship of people who are pious. So just remember that point, inshallah. This is a point, and I would want to stress this every so often in this course, inshallah, because reality is that when it comes to business, the fastest way to become successful in business is be among successful business people. Right? I'm sure many of people can appreciate that. And, you know, if in this course you're looking for some type of business advices as well, I will be throwing a few, you know, gems, inshallah, for you to consider. And it's something that, you know, established universally in some regards. But it is some of the things that we can actually do to become really successful in life. And that is, one of them is to follow those people who are successful in these ventures. So if you want to know a little bit about, you know, making a roti, you don't go on, you know, try to figure it out. And yes, obviously you have to put in effort, but you go buy a roti maker who is very good at what he does or she does, and you learn how to make roti for them. You become an excellent roti maker from that. So it's very important to understand that experts is how knowledge is passed on. And you know, one interesting thing, I'll give you a little caveat for what, you know, normally you would hear about, you know, the medias that we have on YouTube and so on. You know, on YouTube, right, obviously there's a lot of negative information, but there's a lot of positive information as well. It's filled with, it's a resource base, and although it's a lot of videos and it's shorts now, and there's a lot of distractions, mashallah, and we do have to protect ourselves. But the caveat that I'll tell you is that YouTube and many of the things that you can benefit from YouTube is actually persons who are giving you their experience. So when they give you their experience that they have, right? When they give you the experience that they have, they put it up in a video form, and then you're able to benefit from that that experience that they have. So think about it. For those people who know what I'm talking about and who uses YouTube for learning purposes, you would know that, you know, when you're trying to figure out how to do something, go on YouTube it. Because not just that you have the information about it, but you can also get someone's experience and explaining exactly the item that you have or the troubleshooting that you need to do or the experience that they had with these products, for example. So you're able to see it from a person. So that helps you a lot, right? The caveat is that, yeah, YouTube is actually people giving their experience in different things. Inshallah, when we put up this in on YouTube as well, and inshallah you'll be able to view it and share it as well. This helps us, inshallah, when you go and you share good information, just like all information when it's shared, it actually benefits you or it harms you. So try to share the ones that benefits you. So YouTube can become a really good learning tool as well. And all these things are tools. You have to use it in the right ways. Obviously, if you abuse a tool, then obviously it become a problem for you. So very important, inshallah, that we can understand that life itself requires people's experience to become effective, inshallah. So there are many things that I'll talk about, and then many things that, you know, can be, you know, expanded upon. Sometimes I touch on a topic, but I might not go in depth with the topic. Whatever it is, there are certain things that you may find to be productive to your situation. So if you find something like that, do share with us. It helps us and inshallah motivates us to focus more on things that will be more meaningful to others, inshallah, to yourselves. So quickly on the topics here, I have the overview of some of the things that we'll be talking about, inshallah, within this course. And yes, I do hope that I will give you more information than just the lectures and just the slides and all these things. But I want to give you write-ups on all these topics as well. So inshallah, that becomes beneficial to you and to me first and then to you. But not just that, Tijarah itself and trade is something that we need to expand the knowledge of and try to get more believers and more Muslims more involved in the Islamic Sharia method of Tijarah, because it's something that's very beneficial, and we'll go through that as well. So the first topic here we have is introduction to it. So we're kind of starting that today, but we'll continue more of it next week as well, inshallah. The virtue of Tijarah. So these two I'll be touching on for these 2 weeks as we go along. We're going to talk about key Qur'anic concepts for business as well, because in the Quran obviously is a guidance for the Nas. It's a guidance for all of mankind, and in it have some beautiful gems with regard to the topic of trade. So Allah talks about, in particular, you know, when He goes into the detail of some of the things, and as I said in the beginning, Allah uses the same types of daily routine that the Sahaba would have had to be able to highlight some of the things that is needed to be understood so that they can grow with the concept and practically implement it whilst they're doing their daily grind, as you would say. You know, for example, the concept of honesty, the concept of, you know, being mindful of the other person who you're trading, and the relationships of trade, and, you know, as a buyer, as a seller, who you're trading to, and, you know, that type of relationships that you'll build in the process of doing that. So all of it is, you know, so fondly integrated as a Muslim and in your deen and in the Quran. It's amazing, and that's why I really do love this topic as well. Trade is one of those things, or buyu is called another word in Quran and in Hadith and Fiqh. There's also Tijarah. So we'll talk about some of them now. And but the point I'm making is that it's something that I have some interest in as well. And the more that you get into it, the more you see the practicality of deen. That's the amazing thing about it, inshallah. The fourth week, we'll look at some of the lives of the companions as well, and some of their trading, and, you know, how successful they were as traders as well. Number 5, we'll look at some of the social responsibilities of Muslims and Muslim entrepreneurs. 6th week, we'll look at the business that brings goodness and flexibility. Business itself brings goodness and flexibility. So being an entrepreneur, it's very hard, it's very difficult, it's very demanding, but it comes with a lot of goodness as well. And inshallah, when you become successful business people, Allah continue to grant you all the barakah and make you successful and great business people, inshallah. We need millions of them. We need thousands of great millionaires and billionaires, inshallah, in the Muslim ummah. And when you're doing that effectively as a believer, it brings goodness, comfort, and strength to everyone, not just believers, but everyone. his purpose in this life, and he will inshallah use his wealth for the right things. So also there's spirituality in business. So it's a whole realm of your ibadah as well, or that connection or that effort that you put in to get closer to Allah. So even business gives you that way to get closer to Allah. Just like, for example, if you want to become more pious, right? Like once a Sahabi, he came to the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he said to him, um, I want to be close to you in Jannah. I want to be your neighbor in Jannah, basically. So the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, Alaykum bis sujud, that hold fast to your sajda. Basically, hold fast to your prayer. So pray more and more and more and more, because that will be one of the ways that will get me close to, get you close to me as a believer, as a Sahabi. So there are some things that gets us closer to Allah and closer to the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So one of those things, methods, so there are different methods to get close to the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. One of those methods is a good, successful Muslim practicing believer who is an entrepreneur. So that's why it's so interesting. It's something I don't personally feel that we talk about it enough. So you tell me some of your experiences with this, inshallah. The 8th week, we look a little bit about some of the halal business transactions in business itself, because there are some things that we should be mindful of and we should be doing more of. And also we look at some of the haram ones as well that we should stay clear of and try to find alternative methods for. There are many different products in Islamic finance as well that we can look into, and that will help us find structures that are permissible. Very easy as well, but it's just a different way of doing it and something we should be mindful of as believers. The 10th week, we look at developing a business model as a Muslim entrepreneur and try to find out, and try to, inshallah, maybe connect with each other about what works for us, what became successful, what we can do and what we can't do, and so on. The 11th week, we look at creating opportunities for halal income, because even financing obviously is one of the big things. A lot of people find it very hard. I mean, it is hard, especially here locally. We have in Trinidad and Tobago very little options for financing. The reality is that business thrives on financing to be able to finance your business ventures and to be able to put in capital to be able to then keep the business running and so on. So sometimes there's cash flow issues, and it. Right, I can name it. I find myself there sometimes myself personally, because business is something that can be very demanding. So sometimes you have thousands of dollars, in stock just lying there, and you're not getting the cash flow, you're not getting the sales fast enough. It's costing you to just have it there, and you have to try to push that out, and all the different things that people do to ensure that their business is running and becoming successful. And then you have so many challenges in that path as well. The 12th thing is that the honesty, the fairness, some of the ethics, the trust in building business details and so on. This is some of the topics that we're touching on. They're not going to be exactly laid out like that, but obviously there's an order to it, so we can, cover as much as we can in this course. Reality is we can't cover everything, but, in 12 weeks we'll be able to cover a considerable amount, inshallah. Other than that, we'll be recording it, so we'll place it up on YouTube. So if you do happen to miss it, which you should not, you should also encourage others to join on with us, inshallah, so we can maximize the benefit. But if you do miss it, we will upload the recordings afterwards on YouTube, inshallah, and you can always listen to the class. What I want to do, though, the last thing I want to mention here, is I would like everyone to listen and look at every single session. And I would try to cover that full amount of array of topics that we laid out there. And then I would like you all to even take an exam on it, a quiz, right? Because I will be, inshallah, feeding you handouts as well, so you can study the same topics that we would have covered and then benefit from it as well, inshallah. But the idea is when you do have some type of exam, we will understand that, you have picked this up and you have understood it, and maybe, inshallah, internalize it, and inshallah, we'll be able to practice on it as well. And other than that, we can, inshallah, as some suggested already, to give a certificate of, covering some general rules of Islamic business and Islamic business ethics, inshallah. So if you're all ready for that, and you do tell me, inshallah, you can always contact me. There's the WhatsApp group, it's open as well, inshallah, and there's this as well where you can join. So, you have something that shows that you have covered a certain amount and you wrote an exam for it as well. So if you're feeling afraid of the exam, we'll do it orally if you want as well. Or just do it on one of those Google doc exam portals or something like that, Google classroom portals or something like that. But we will get something done, inshallah. So please take it to be meaningful and that you want to grow from it, inshallah, so you can benefit yourself, your others, and bring the barakah. And that's essentially what will come out of it. You bring the barakah of trade and wealth in your homes, inshallah, that will benefit you and bring you closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The concept of Tijarah in Islam. So this is the concept of what is trade in Islam. Business activity and what we would call financing and money. It is the blood of the economy. When there is no trade taking place, the economy itself starts becoming stagnant. It becomes frozen. There's not enough goodness, and from that, there's so many different types of difficulties that comes and challenges that is faced. Now, Allah has referred to wealth twofold. One is that it can be a means of you getting closer to Him, and it can also be a means of your destruction or your a test from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that you have to pass. Just like every other bounty and favor, even Allah refers to trade, Allah refers to children, Allah refers to women, different aspects. There are bounties and benefits to us. There are things that Allah has placed as His favors upon us. But if you use it the wrong way and do not recognize Allah, do not thank Allah, do not be mindful that they should not become distractions, then they can become those same very things that takes you away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and into the into His punishment. So wealth is one of those things. So, but wealth in the life that we're living in, it's one of the, as you would say, the blood of the economy. Now, I've mentioned this quite a few times, and people really take to it because they only understand it like this. I've been doing this in school recently. I've been trying to do entrepreneurship. We do entrepreneurship day, and we try to build entrepreneurship in the children, in the kids at our school. Because we know the importance of it, and it's something that's seldom taught in schools, especially at a young age. And if people were to learn about the benefits and the kind of impact and the benefits that they can bring to themselves and their families, early on, it would have a major benefit to everyone, right? To yourselves and so on. So a lot of times people start really late in understanding those things. So we do try to bring it to them. Business is integral to human life and it is encouraged in Islam. As we all know, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was a trader before he came into prophethood. He was an agent of his Khadija radiallahu anha, who then he afterwards married because she saw the benefit of his trading and his his honesty and how good and full of barakah he was as well. So this was something that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was well known for, even before he got Nabuwa. So it is encouraged. And likewise, many of the Sahaba radiallahu anhum were traders, they were entrepreneurs, they were Tajrs. They were Tajir. Tajir is the person who does trade. Tijarah is a significant form of economic activity which Allah in the Quran emphasizes. So we've touched on some of those and we'll continue doing that. It is viewed as a form of worship, Ibadah, when conducted ethically. So as I mentioned as well, when a person does this in the right way, it actually becomes a sense of closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Here, there are provisions in Islam regarding the limitations that can be carried out in economic activity. But entrepreneurship is an economic activity that will be calculated before Allah. Found this to be something that's very important. When you do your trade and you're checking balances and you're checking to see if you made money, if you didn't make money, if you're losing money and these kind of things, you're not just accounting for yourself and your accountant for the taxation and all these things, but you are doing that with dollars and cents that Allah Himself is accounting. Allah has an accountant as well. And those accountants is Kiram and Katibin, right? They are sitting there and they're actually taking account of the dollars and cents. And to ensure that He will write down the different categories of the income and the liabilities that you have, and He will put a balance sheet. And He will check to see if you're profitable or if you're in loss, and He will understand right away. He doesn't need a calculator or doesn't need to figure out, what is the intention for this or how this was earned, and, what's the barakah that should be the return of this investment, and, how to give this person back. Allah has encompassed all of that information. But understanding it from this perspective is something that is very important, and I found to be profound. Is this, that entrepreneurship is an economic activity that we do, right? And that we will be doing, inshallah, that is calculated before Allah. He is calculating. He has his own accountants. He's the one who is actually certifying and ratifying our accounts, because Allah actually sees and takes into account what is done. So this is something that is very, very important to understand. As we said just now, I was going on to something to say something. Money is the blood of the economy, and the time that you spend the money is when it benefits you. Keeping money, hoarding money does not benefit you. Keeping money and hoarding money or saving money in its blank way, just saving money, actually puts you in loss, because you lose money with inflation every single day. So money devalues, right? And the whole inflation and capitalism is something I wish to talk a little bit about. There's not really true free trade, and the systems are actually, because it's a riba-based system, a lot of the world runs on these kind of systems. It's actually very, very volatile. It's something that is not very sustainable. That's why there's so much to economics, right? And why trade is how it is. And when you look at the macro scale, why wars are fought. Wars are fought more on economical benefit than anything else. We know about this, right? We've understood it. We've seen the world, the hypocrisy of the world, and so on. It's not about fair trade. It's not about justice. It's not about what is right and what's ethically moral. It's all about money, really. So people fight wars just to ensure that their economy stands. And that's what happens when you don't fully understand the economic impacts that affect our lives on a daily basis. So one of the things that I was mentioning just now, money, it really only benefits you when you spend it. Either you spend it and it benefits you in the akhirah, or either you spend it and it benefits you in this world as an investment and gives you back a return. So you try to put investments that have some kind of return and benefit you. So you try to invest in assets. But keeping money itself doesn't really benefit anyone. So it's one of the false notions that we've been growing up to understand. Although saving is important in its due respect, but obviously it's for another purpose. It's not for the essence or for the reality of keeping money. Nobody needs to keep money. They need to actually spend money to get more money. And that's how it really works. So something to be mindful of, inshallah, and something to bring up. I'll end with this slide, inshallah. Key Qur'anic terms used for entrepreneurship in the Quran. Tijarah, so we mentioned this, Tijarah. So make sure you can say that word as well. That's probably one of the questions I'll ask you in the exam. How do you pronounce Tijarah? What are the words of Tijarah? What are the root words, letters of Tijarah? Make sure you can write it in Arabic as well. Something we should all learn, inshallah, the Arabic script, understanding some of the basic parts of it. We have to increase our knowledge as well, inshallah. Second thing is buyu'. Bay. So buyu', a lot of the fiqh books, they term the whole trading section with this terminology, buyu'. In fact, Imam Bukhari, rahimahullah, in his great work, the Sahih al-Bukhari, right, he starts this topic right after he finishes the Ibadah, or the topics of worship. He starts the topic of trade. Because trading, and this actually is one of the strong ways, again, to get to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and one of the differentiating ways to see how pious a person is, because his ethical practices in business will be a great determinant factor to see how halal his food is, his worship, all the things that he'll be doing. If it's haram, then aynas tajabu. How is it that Allah accepts this when everything is haram? He's not nourished by haram, he eats by haram, he clothes himself with haram. May Allah protect us all and give us all, inshallah, halal. Another word that is used is tadayantum. Whenever you do transactions of currencies, for example, this word in particular looks at trade of currencies. So we know Forex is something high topic, high thing that people do try to trade a lot on, and something as well to consider, whether it be halal or haram. So Forex trading itself mostly have not been approved, and there's too many different ambiguities, which is something we'll touch on as well, inshallah. But you can trade the currencies. I'm not saying that, I'm saying online trading. There's a few things we'll talk about. But Tadayan to basically lending and credit transactions. And as I said, this is something that is, although Islam, and I will talk about the different aspects of it, has given us a lot of importance to not having outstanding loans. It also gives us the method of getting loans and getting borrowing money, because borrowing money is also part of your trading system. Without being able to have that liquidity in business transactions, trading can become something that's very difficult. So it is actually part and parcel of business, borrowing money, repaying loans, all these different things. They are something that we have to look into as well, inshallah. Ishara. Ishtara. Ishtara here is the word in its sorry, it's past tense with ishtara. So Allah says many times ishtara, yashtari. He uses this word to exchange, purchase. So even Allah talks about that many of the believers they trade or they buy or they purchase their place in Jannah. So this is word is used, and it's also used for buying and selling. Fadlullah, I mentioned this in the part in the beginning of our presentation today. Fadlullah is itself fadl, or the virtue of Allah, the grace of Allah in fair business practices. So this is some of the things that have been mentioned, or words that are actually used in the Quran with regard to entrepreneurship, trade, buying, selling, lending, credit, and all the whole, inshallah, aspects of it. Okay, so today we'll close up there. I have a few minutes, inshallah, that I can take a few questions. If you have, please put it on the post there. All right, let's see. If a Muslim requests a favor from you, example, monetary assistance, etc., should you place that person under a business contract? Or if you ask for a favor, it is wise to request a contract. Will this be covered? Yes, that will be covered, inshallah. So that's one of the topics that Allah Himself has mentioned. So that same word that we talked about, tadayantum. So Allah talks about that chapter, that part, even very clearly. That basically when you are having, in fact, that's your homework. Let's put out. Look up the verse. Which verse is it? What does Allah says? And one of the things that you should try doing as well, inshallah, look up the tafsir. So two major tafsirs that you should look at for beginners especially is Ma'ariful Quran. Ma'ariful Quran. You do find online forms as well, so you can get that as well. And also Tafsir Ibn Kathir. So these two tafsirs are two good sources that you can gain more information from as well, inshallah. But look out for the writing of a contract when you're borrowing money, and what does that say? What does Allah say about that? So that's your homework. Make sure to do it, inshallah. To don't do their work as well, inshallah. That's a joke. That's a joke. Don't get too afraid, inshallah. What is the Islamic perspective on trading cryptocurrencies? So we'll touch on that a little bit later on. Crypto itself is something that changes a lot. There are some that Allah has, the ulama and the scholars have given some allowances for. So in general speaking, Bitcoin is something that that has been given permission, but not all cryptos are allowed. They give it in one of the reasons, because crypto, Bitcoin is something that is very stable. Part of trade as well is stability of an item, or and it has to be something that is considered a real means of exchange. So, like for example, Bitcoin has reached that level of acceptance in the world market, and also it has a sense of stability towards it as well. So there's some leeway to that one. Some of the others be as you would hope, inshallah. So we'll touch on that, and I'll share you some resources and even some places where you can get further information as well on these topics. How much profit should someone make by add something they're selling? So that's a really good question. I've heard this many times. Are you allowed to have 100%, 200% profit markup and so on? So we'll touch on that as well. That's something that I will highlight as well, inshallah. But the better part of it, once it's not in shortage and you can, and everyone is market value and you can actually make that much profit, then there's no major harm in it, except that also Allah has put that ethical code as well, where be lenient, be given, be benefit others, and so on. So it's a balance that you have to create, and also you have to look at the circumstance and the items that you're selling. But there's no actual percentage that has been specific or specified in Sharia that you must follow, and you can't trade with more profit than this amount. So, inshallah. Okay, so anything else anyone wants to bring up before we close off there? Okay, so please tell others as well. Let's join this class, inshallah. Let's be part of it. Remember, it's every Monday at this time. And inshallah, we'll continue building this. Until next time, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Ma'as-salama. Keep safe, inshallah, and continue learning. Jazakumullah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.